Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook along with Tomm Pfitzenmaier, Summit Commodity Brokerage. Mostly a higher day on Friday with the exception of feeder cattle futures. And Tom, we started off with soybeans, more fund selling pressure to start the day here today, but we kind of pulled it back. And let's talk about the wheat market first off, because some of that was tied to this Russian export ban news or some conflicting reports on it. Do you believe it? And was that what moved the market, or was it just short covering in the wheat?
I think a combination of the two in wheat. There's been this grain corridor discussion all week long between Ukraine and the Russians. Is it at 60 days? Is it 120? Is it not at all? That's kind of been an ongoing thing this week. They've sold off wheat pretty hard. Actually, even with the 26.5 cent rally we had on Friday, we still closed down 22 cents on the wheat market. So that was a market that got oversold and certainly needed to have some correction. I guess we'll see next week whether that was all it was or whether it just resumes its the weak nature it's had for the last month or so.
Yeah, it was certainly due for a short covering rally. That there's no question about that. So, like I said, that kind of helped pull the soybean market back to plus side status. But funds have been liquidating in that soybean market. They've been liquidating in the products. Are we done with that yet here?
That's going to be the question Monday morning because the funds are short soybeans, or short corn, excuse me, have been short wheat for a while, but they still hold a substantial long position in both soybeans and particularly in meal. They liquidated a lot of that. They've trimmed it back. Is that enough, or is this just this little pop we had on Friday, profit taking, end of the week profit taking, and then they resumed selling or getting out of those long positions Sunday night and Monday. A lot of this has been related to the macroeconomic markets, the concern about the banks and what's going to go on there, about recession and none of that has changed. So it does make you wonder if they're just going to continue to step to the sidelines until they get most of that long position liquidated. Now, the interesting thing about all that is funds don't tend to be short going into the planting season.
True.
And you've got all these problems with cold weather up in the northern production areas that are still sort of looks like they're going to hang around for a while and plague the market. So at some point, we're probably going to start talking about planting delays and maybe even, prevent plant or all the stuff that goes with that.
Yeah, and we've lost over like $1.22 I have on the May contract here in a very short amount of time. And since the first of the year, new crop has lost over $1.50. So you could certainly argue we're very oversold due for a correction.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about it, and maybe today was the beginning of that. I guess next week we'll see. We'll see. There's going to be a lot of give and take on what that report next week's going to say. I assume everybody's going to kind of start off with the Outlook Forum numbers as the sort of base. I'm hearing a lot of people that have done surveys saying that they think the soybean acreage is going to maybe be a little more than what the outlook was. So, and if that's the case, then that's going to continue to keep pressure on those new crop beans.
Now, the corn market, you mentioned that the funds have gone short in that market, so that's taken some relief off. But we've also had China business coming at the market, and the cash market is still very strong. So, does that put a bid under this market or a floor, and can we build on that?
Well, certainly the strength in the wheat today helped. But yeah, I mean, you can paint a pretty good scenario for corn. Like you said, export demand's decent, quite good. I mean, still lagging behind what we need to have it be on a weekly basis to meet the USDA's projections. But with Argentina out of the market and no Brazilian corn available yet, export and China starting to buy. And if that continues, then I think you can see a pretty good bid underneath the corn market. The macroeconomic stuff still sort of exists for corn, so that's sitting there as a bit of a negative. But like we said, funds are short, and they don't tend to be short going into the planting season, especially with things as cold and wet as they are right now. So yeah. I just think the low we put in here the other day on corn's probably going to hold, and I'd be surprised if we test it too hard.
Now, December down a penny for the week on the corn, and you've got to believe that there's maybe some anticipation of these higher acres coming into the end of this next week on the prospective plantings report. Is that going to kind of keep a lid on that market, or are we going to see more pressure going into that report?
Oh no, I think it's going to keep. I think it's going to keep the December corn well supported. I just don't see a lot of selling pressure coming
Okay.
in ahead of that report. I guess certainly won't be seeing any farmers selling pressure. The farmers kind of lock the bin doors here, and they don't need the money in most cases. And I think they're going to be content to sort of see if we get this traditional rally
Spring rally.
in April and pre planting or early planting.
Yeah, and I know you've been advising folks, to wait for that rally before they make any sales. So good point there. Okay, the cattle
The
market. Go
last
ahead.
couple of years, we've had to worry about drought and dry weather in corn. I think wetness is going to be something that's going to be considered. A lot of farmers have talked to me about the fact that they've gotten every pond and every low spot planted in the last
Right.
year, and that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So you have those ponds and areas you can't get planted, and you take them out, and it makes it maybe a little harder to achieve the yields you're hoping for.
Livestock, cattle futures a little higher for the week, higher on Friday. Are we, putting a little base in there that we can build on now here? Have we gotten those economic fears out of the way?
I think a lot of people that I read are expecting a little weakness in the cash market next week. But yeah, it looks like you're going to see pretty good support on that April contract in cattle at 160. The numbers wise, I think we're in really good shape in cattle. March tends to be the worst month of the year for demand. May tends to be the best. So you're going to be in the transition here of demand starting to improve over the next 30 to 40 days. So I think that's going to be supportive. It's just hard for me to get very bearish cattle with the numbers we've got now.
Yeah.
Feeders are obviously going to be bouncing back and forth off of what the corn and meal markets do. But I think overall the cattle market should be well supported and could possibly move higher as we get into the summer months
All right.
if the demand holds up.
Gotcha. All right. Thanks for joining us. It's Tomm Pfitzenmaier with Summit Commodity Brokerage and Markets Now.